Howdy! Hey, let's get started with Magic Arc app. In this video, we're going to learn how to add a car and how to add a driver and how to keep everything straight in the app. In subsequent videos, we'll look at how to add a pace car and how to actually run the race. Do you remember the movie The Matrix? The reason I bring it up is because in The Matrix, there was a virtual world and there was a real world. What was reality? Reality was a place where everybody wore crummy clothes, all the food tasted like chicken, and you cruised around in the sewers on a hovercraft called the Nebuchadnezzar. What was the virtual world? The virtual world was Sydney about the time Daniel Ricciardo was 10 years old. So just like in The Matrix, in Scaley Digital, there's a real world and a virtual world. What's the virtual world? It's the app, or any program that you're running that's in two-way communications with the PB. What is reality? To see what reality is, we've got to jump in the Wayback Machine again, and I'm going to move the camera. We've got to go back past the APB, past the Simple H PB Pro PB, all the way to the 7030 PB. And the 7030 PB could not do two-way communications with a computer. All it could do was output. Well, if it couldn't talk to a computer, why'd they call it Scaley Digital? And the answer is because of what goes down the rails. This is reality in SSD. 6 IDs, 64 levels of throttle information, 1 brake bit on or off, and 1 lane change bit on or off. That's reality in Scaley Digital. Now remember, in The Matrix, the problem was if you got killed in the virtual world, you died in the real world. Well, you can't die in Scaley Digital, of course, but if you get the virtual world confused, you can confuse what's going on the track, and cars aren't going to run the way you want them to. The race won't run the way you want it to. So it's important to remember what the reality is for Scaley Digital. Okay, let's go to the app. Launching Magic Arc app. And you can see we're using version 128, and we'll enter the program, tapping the gray button. Okay, and so I know it's tempting to add all the cars you've got into the database and maybe make a whole bunch of different races, but it's early days yet with Magic Arc app, and we've had some bugs where you had to delete the app and re-download it. So the app's only been out for about 3 months. So I'm going to teach you a real minimalist approach to using the app. And if you follow this, you'll be able to keep things straight. And as you gain experience, you can make it more and more complex, add more and more stuff into the database. So you see what I've got here, the only race I'll ever need. And here we see our race options screen, and I've added a photo to make my app cool. We talked about the race options screen in the last video. And so at the last video, we were ready to go to select cars and drivers. And so, is there reality in the app? Yes, and here it is. This stack of 6 cars and drivers reflects the 6 IDs that are reality in the world of Scaley Digital. But even here, you can get things messed up. But let's take a look at what we have for features when we add a car. I'm going to tap on the select car, and I tapped on the select car in the blue display line. And I'm asked, do I want to add a pace car or do I want to add a regular human-driven car? I'm going to add a regular human-driven car. And I go to the select car screen. Here are the 2 cars that I've already added. And so I'm going to tap on the 3-stripe menu and add a new car. And I'm going to just call this car blue. And again, if you just keep the car names the same as the color of their display lines, it'll be easier to keep things straight. As you gain more experience, you can get more and more complex. And we can add a photo for the car. If you tap on change, it'll show you your pictures. And there's a nice blue car. And then we have 4 options that we have to set here. The first is max power. And Magic says use max power in the car area if you're balancing cars. You'll see when we add a driver, you'll have another opportunity to set max power. The thing is, the 2 max power settings, one for the car and one for the driver, work together. The app multiplies the car max power times the driver max power. So if you set the car max power to 50% and the driver max power, you'll get 0.5 times 0.5, 25% power. So here's a place where you need to keep straight what you're doing. And I recommend just leaving the cars at 100% and doing all your power settings with the driver, because the driver also has the throttle profile that you set. Next we see fuel load. You'll recall in the general configuration menu we set how fast the fuel burn rate is. And if you change the fuel load here, if you reduce your fuel tank size to 50%, well, you're going to have to make twice as many pit stops. Your tank will go empty twice as fast. Here we have another fuel burn, and what this does is reduce the rate of fuel burn that we set in the general configuration menu. So above this post in the thread, a couple of posts up, I've copied Magic's explanation of how the fuel burn and tire wear things work together. And so you can read that just to keep it straight. And we may hopefully begin doing some internal documentation where we'll add some explanation in the program itself. The same thing with tire wear. You can reduce the rate at which your tires wear out. So set the biggest setting in general configuration and put this down to the lowest setting, and your tires will last the longest possible amount of time. Okay, the last thing we have to do before we add the car is calibrate it. And here's an opportunity where we're going to interact with reality, right? We've got to put a car on track and calibrate it. If you're not using any features like yellow flags where you slow the cars down, or weather or incidents, you can just lock calibration at 0%, because when you call a yellow flag, all the cars will stop. And so that's what I typically do. And that takes us back to the car options, and the last step is to add the car. And there we see, there's our blue car added in our select car. And the very last thing we have to do is click the check box all the way over on the right, and that'll add that car to the select cars and driver screen. So there we've added a car. Now we can add a driver. I've got driver 1 and 2. I have to click on the 3-stripe menu and add a driver. And again, I really encourage you, use the colors for the cars and use the numbers for the drivers. So this is the blue car, the blue display line, so that would correspond with ID 3. This is driver 3. And I can again click change and add a photo, and we'll make Habbo the driver there. And if you don't like that photo, just click remove and boom, it's gone. Okay, here once again we get to set max power. Just like when we add the car, we had a max power setting, but these 2 settings get multiplied together. So I recommend only setting max power in the driver's side. So whatever you want that to be, make it 50%. Next we see throttle profile types. We start out with the simple, and we have one variable that we can vary, and you can see I'm moving the slider there and changing the shape of the throttle profile. But besides simple profiles, we also have advanced profiles. Advanced throttle profiles allow us to vary 3 variables. And we can change the shape of this curve in a number of different ways. That's the advanced throttle profile. And we have one more option for throttle profiles, predefined throttle profiles. And these are similar, not exactly the same as the Scaley profiles. These profiles were worked out by Dr. C. And so we have profile A, B, C, D, and E. And each one is very similar to the Scaley profile. And I think these Scaley profiles were very well chosen. Profile A is the default profile, and that profile gives you the slowest top speed, so you're least likely to launch a car off the track with throttle profile A. And also, it really only works well with power settings 80, 90, 100%. So if you're just using the default 100% power level and you're using profile A, you'll be in good shape. The most responsive profile that I found was profile D. So again, this is something you can experiment with and see how you like. The last option here is controller rumble. I usually turn controller rumble off just to save batteries. Controller rumble is only implemented with KERS, and on the start, I think now, Magic intends to implement more and more and more controller rumbles. He's got the readout from Scalextric of all the different situations that Scaley activates the controller rumble motor, so expect to see more controller rumble added. Anyway, now we add driver. So now we've got our driver 3, and just as with the car, the last step is to click the blue checkbox, and now we've added a car and we've added a driver. So hey, that's pretty simple, right? But look at the display line closely, all the way over on the right side. You see there's a trash can, and for the red car there's a down arrow. For the green and blue cars there's up arrows and down arrows. And this is a place where you can get into a situation where there is no spoon. Let's see, I'm going to tap the red car down arrow. And you see what happened. The red car, and my Chromecast is running a little slow there. The red car with driver 1 and the green car with driver 2 swap positions. But hey, wait a minute. This is reality is there's IDs 1 through 6. What ID is the red car now? I'm going to leave that as an exercise for the student, but as you might guess, you're going to have to reset the ID on that car. So if you've been playing around like that, when you go to the Prepare for Race screen, there's a button so you can set ID. So now we see driver 1 is green. We better go over and set ID. And the app will do that automatically. And so if you set ID in the app for each of the cars before you start the race, if you've been messing around and might have gotten the IDs confused, that will solve your problem and you'll be okay. But you know, we can really get to a situation where there is no spoon here. Let's do this. I'm going to click on, I'm going to put driver 1 and the red car back where they need to go. Okay, so we have red car driver 1, green car driver 2, car blue driver 3. Okay, well look at this. I'm going to click on driver 2, and now I'm going to click the blue checkbox next to driver 1. Uh-oh, there is no spoon. I've got 2 cars, both being driven by driver 1. And yeah, if you physically set 2 cars to the same ID, ID1, you can drive 2 cars with 1 controller if you have this situation in your app, but you won't like it. The speed and power levels are not what you'd expect them to be, and so I don't recommend doing this. If you get in a situation like this and you need to get rid of it, just hit the trash can. Boom, goes away. Okay, and Chromecast's running a little bit slow. I click select car, and I'll just add back the green car and add back, it should be driver 2, right? So very minimalist approach. We're using the car colors to match the display colors, and we're using the driver numbers to match what the IDs should be on track. And again, if you do that, you can avoid a situation like this. Let's see where we have the red car, and we'll add a photo. And there's Moss's Mazzer, and we're going to use the red car and driver 1, and let's click on driver 1, and we'll just tell the program who we want that to be. How about Moss himself? Okay. So now, click on the checkbox. Hey, we have the red car and driver 1, but look what's on track. The Nebuchadnezzar. So again, you got to be careful to keep IDs straight in the app, and if you follow the minimalist approach, at least at first, you won't have any problems. So we can remove our pictures. Always click the blue checkbox when you're selecting what you want to use in a particular display line. Okay, and there we go. Alrighty, so thanks very much.